So good afternoon and welcome to the Tidemark Theatre. My name is Ron Neufeld. I'm the Deputy City Manager and the General Manager of Operations with the City of Campbell, and I will be your MC for this afternoon's event. Most of us recognize that we live in one of the most beautiful parts of the world. With all that surrounds us, it's easy to forget that we also live in an active earthquake zone. Today's session is about gaining a greater appreciation and understanding of living in an active earthquake zone and what has, what is, and what is yet to be done to manage the risks associated with earthquakes. If you own property or if you live in the Campbellton neighborhood or in the downtown area of Campbell, you may have received a letter with a brochure showing a map and details to help you plan for a major worst-case scenario earthquake. If you didn't receive the letter, the brochures and paper copies of answers to frequently asked questions are here today for you. And these are also posted on the city's website if you wish to access them there. Today's presentation is also being recorded and posted online, so if you are not able to stay for the whole event, or if you have friends and family who weren't able to attend, they can access it through the city's website as the video is linked to our YouTube channel. While the focus of this public information campaign is on what to do in the event of a major earthquake, people in Campbell River also need to remember that a series of major storms, not unlike what we've experienced in the last couple of days, also provide risks of flooding in a similar manner. So here's how we have structured the afternoon. The session is scheduled for 2 hours in total. During the first hour, there will be 3 presentations from various experts that will be providing lots of information. After the presentations, we'll take a short break to set up the second half of the session. And there are some information kiosks in the lobby that you're welcome to take a look at and to take information home with you after the session is over. If after the presentations and after reviewing the information you still have unanswered questions, we ask you to come back into the theater for the second half of the afternoon, where I will facilitate a question and answer period with a panel of topic experts. If you see or hear something through the presentations that is unclear, jot it down and join us for the latter half of the afternoon, and we'll ensure that you get an opportunity to ask your question in a way that everybody can hear it and that the appropriate people can respond to it. So now that you know the format, let me tell you a little bit about who will be presenting and what they will be talking about. Up first will be Han Cao from Natural Resources Canada to explain why earthquakes occur, why some places tend to have more earthquakes than others, and how earthquake activities are monitored. There will also be a description of the overall geological setting of Western Canada and an explanation of why it is associated with high seismic risk. Han Cao is a research scientist with Seismology Geological Survey of Canada, the Pacific Geoscience Center, and he is a Bachelor of Science, a Master's in Science, and a PhD in Geophysics. He was recruited by the Institute of Earth Sciences in Taiwan immediately after finishing his PhD studies, where he was in charge of establishing the broadband array in Taiwan for seismology. He joined the Geological Survey of Canada in 2002 as a research scientist working on earthquake source characteristics and seismogenic structures. In 2006, he was appointed by the School of Earth and Ocean Sciences, University of Victoria, as an adjunct professor. He has served as an associate editor of the Journal of Geophysical Research since 2011 and became a member of the editorial board of the International Journal of Geophysics in 2012. He has been awarded the Outstanding Research Award of the National Research Council on 2 separate occasions and was awarded the Distinguished Youth Medal of the Republic of China. Currently, he is the leader of Induced Seismicity Research of Natural Resources Canada, and please join me in welcoming Han Cao.
you, Ron, for the very kind introduction. My name is Hong Kao. I'm an earthquakes research scientist at Natural Resources Canada. It is certainly my pleasure to be able to come up here and give this presentation about earthquakes along the west coast of Canada. There are actually a lot of different and interesting and important issues on this particular topic. And because of the time constraint, obviously, in today's talk, I won't be able to cover all the details about this interesting and important topic. I hope that in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so, I will be able to give you an overall idea about the current knowledge on earthquakes in this region. And I would like to explain to you what we have learned so far and what are the things that we are still trying to understand. Well, quite often when an earthquake occurred, and it is usually big enough for people to actually feel it, the very first question in people's mind is, where is the earthquake source? And in fact, before I answer this question, I'd like you to see this map, which is a world map that shows the distribution of magnitude 5 and larger earthquakes around the world. Now, this is a map where you can see, because I don't have a, there you go. It's top right. Oh, there we go. All right. Here is the North America. This is South America. And as you can see, each of these dots represent one magnitude 5 earthquake. It is quite obvious that the distribution of earthquakes globally is not uniform. And most of the earthquakes tend to cluster along a belt-shaped regions. For example, on the northern, I just describe it to you. Basically, if you look at the middle part of the map is the Pacific Ocean. And as you can see, most of the red dots circled around the Pacific. On the north side is the Alaska Aleutian arc. Going from east to west, you can see the Kurile arc. Then it's the Japan, and then it's the Mariana Trench and the Ryukyu Trench. Down there you see Philippines, and beneath it you see a very large belt of earthquakes associated with Indonesia. Turning to the right, you will see the Tonga earthquake zone and Kermadec earthquake zone, and going down you will see the New Zealand seismic zone. On the eastern side of Pacific Ocean, up from Alaska, you can see that the earthquake is going down to the Haida-Gwaii, which was formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands, then coming to our region, Vancouver Island, down to Washington State, Oregon State, California State, and then you connect to Mexico, and then we have the Mid-America seismic zone down to South America seismic zone. Now you may also notice that there are many earthquakes that occurred in the middle part of the ocean, where we call it the mid-ocean ridges. And specifically for Pacific, you can see the Pacific Ocean, mid-Pacific Ocean ridge. And on the Atlantic side, you can see earthquakes occurred along the middle part, which is the mid-Atlantic ridge. On the Indian side is the mid-Indian Ocean ridge. Now, After several decades of study, we finally realized that in fact, this distribution pattern of earthquakes, of global earthquakes, essentially tells us how the surface of the Earth deformed and moved with respect to each other. And this is represented by a figure like that. So basically, the physical model now we understand with respect to the deformation of the surface of the Earth is what we call plate tectonic theory. Essentially, it means that the surface of the Earth is divided into several major plates, tectonic plates. And each of these plates has their, independent motion with each other, and their size can vary dramatically from one to the other. The biggest one is the Pacific plate, which is the one on the left, which is the biggest one. There are also a number of large tectonic plates in addition to the Pacific plate. For example, the North America plate, the South America plate, the Antarctica plate, Africa plate, Eurasia plate. Now, Eurasia plate is a very large plate that that combines both the Asia and Europe. Now, in addition to these relatively large plates, we also have a number of smaller tectonic plates. One is the Philippine Sea plate on the left-hand side, and you may also notice that the Nazca plate and Cocos plate on the eastern side of the Pacific plate, and also Caribbean plate, Arabian plate, Indian plate. The one that is most relevant to us is a relatively small plate called Huangtifuca plate, which is actually the tiny one to the northeast side of the Pacific plate. And that one is the most important as far as the seismic hazards of this region is concerned. Now, in this figure, I'm showing you a schematic description of the tectonic configuration of this region. Specifically, the plate tectonics tells us that new materials comes out from mid-ocean ridge, as indicated by that two curved arrows. These new materials come up as magma, forming the new crustal materials along the mid-ocean ridge. And these new crustal materials push the plates away from the ridge toward the other side. And on the other side of the plate, where the oceanic plate starts to go under the overriding continent, and this is the place where we call subduction zone. And this subduction process is mainly the most important process in producing earthquakes. Now, in a typical subduction setting, we have three different kinds of earthquakes that generally can be observed. The first one usually occurred at the deeper depths is shown by these two pink circles. And these kind of deep earthquakes are occurring within the subducted oceanic plate. The second one, and our typical examples of these, what we call deep subducted plates earthquakes, are those occurred, for example, in 1949 and 1965. Both occurred along the Olympia Peninsula down in Washington State. The 2001 Nisqually earthquakes that occurred quite close to beneath the city of Seattle was also a famous one. The second type of the earthquakes associated with subduction zone is called crustal earthquakes. These kind of earthquakes usually occurred at much shallower depths, as shown by all these yellow dots. These yellow dots basically have shallower focal depths, and therefore when they occurred, the shaking usually will be larger comparing to the deeper earthquakes. Some of the very famous examples of crustal earthquakes, including the 1872 earthquake in Washington and the 900 AD event also in Washington. The one that's most relevant to this region is the 1946 Port Alberni earthquake, or sometimes people call Vancouver Island earthquake, that occurred in the middle part of the Vancouver Island, and this event has a magnitude of 7.3. The third type of earthquakes that occurred in the subduction zone is what we call subduction earthquake. The subduction zone earthquakes is the one that occurred along the interface between two adjacent plates. Now, this is the kind of earthquakes that sometimes also termed as megathrust earthquakes. And because these kind of earthquakes can be very, very big, and therefore, when people talk about the big ones, usually they refer to subduction zone earthquake. Well, we know these different types of earthquakes in subduction zone. The second question that we quite often ask is how often do they occur? Now, this is an interesting question, and the answer, of course, is not unique. It depends on the region, and it also depends on the magnitude that we're talking about. For example, if we're talking about small earthquakes meaning that most of the events are not felt by people, then essentially for the western part of Canada, we have small earthquakes on a daily basis. In fact, Natural Resources Canada detect more than 5,000, sometimes even more than 6,000 or even 7,000 earthquakes per year. That means we have anywhere between 20 or even 30 earthquakes per day. For example, on this particular map, I'm showing you the earthquakes that we detected over the past 30 days. And it is perhaps surprising to many of you that in fact we have 80 earthquakes detected in the past 30 days. But according to our records, almost none of them were actually felt. 25 of these events occurred with a magnitude between 3 and 4, 20 events with a magnitude between 2 and 3, and 35 of these events had a magnitude even smaller than 2. Now, in addition to the magnitude, you may also that the distribution of most of these events occurred offshore, west of Vancouver Island, as indicated by these circles on the map. And you may also notice that some of the very smaller earthquakes are occurring on the landward side of the Cascadia subduction system, which means that these are smaller events, perhaps as the kind of crustal earthquakes that I just mentioned earlier. Now, when the earthquake's magnitude become larger, they become potentially likely to cause damage. Now, here I'm showing you a map of the relatively large earthquakes in the entire Western Canada region. Potentially, if the magnitude is greater than 5, then it can cause damage. And here, you can see most of the magnitude larger or equal or larger than 5 earthquakes occurred offshore west of Canada. From the top, that's the Alaska subduction zone, and then as I mentioned, it goes to the Haida-Gwaii, and then to Vancouver Island, then connect to the Washington state. Now you may notice that there are also events that occurred along the Mackenzie River near the boundary between Yukon Territory and Northwest Territory. Those are the events that's associated with interior deformation of the continent and indirectly related to the subduction process on this site. And one of the interesting events, as I mentioned, is this 1946 Vancouver Island earthquake. This event, of course, is a very important one as far as seismic hazard of this region is concerned. On this particular map, I'm showing you the distribution of ground shaking that we determined for this particular earthquake. As I mentioned, the magnitude of this event is 7.3. The shaking of these particular earthquakes were felt very widely in this region, so including city of Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle, and even far south as Portland. As far as the level of ground shaking is concerned, it's shown in different colors. The colors, the epicenter of this event is marked as a black star on the Vancouver Island. And you can see the region marked by the color red are the ones that has shaking intensity of 7, which means that the shaking can be very frightening and structural damage due to the strong ground shaking becomes possible. And finally, we are also we certainly have evidences that this particular region has several occasions when huge earthquakes occurred. Now, when I say huge earthquakes, usually people mean the magnitude is equal or greater than 8. And the occurrence interval for magnitude 8 or larger earthquakes in this region usually will become like centuries apart. In our seismic records, we have at least 3 magnitude 8 or larger earthquakes that occurred in the past 350 years. The most famous one, of course, is the 1700 magnitude 9.0 earthquake, which I'm going to show you later why we have sufficient scientific evidence to prove so. We also have records showing that an earthquake of magnitude 8.1 occurred in 1949, following along the northern side of the Haida-Gwaii region. Up in the corner around the Yukon Territory and Alaska, there was also a magnitude 8.2 earthquake occurred in 1899. The third question, which actually quite often is the one that I was asked whenever somebody realized that I am an earthquake seismologist. That is, well, okay, we know that this is a seismic zone. We know we had big earthquakes occur in the past. But what I really want to know is when the next big one will occur. I have to admit that this is certainly a very important question, but the answer can also be very difficult. Well, unfortunately, the short answer is it is coming for sure. I'm going to show you the evidence why we think it is coming, but we just can't predict precisely when the big one will come. And in other words, the precise earthquake prediction is still not a realistic task yet. However, which is a very important message that I want to express today, and hopefully you will be able to accept, is that we believe that we now know enough about the the earthquake generation process so that we can effectively mitigate seismic hazards. And in the next few slides, I'm going to explain to you why I think we have enough knowledge regarding this. First of all, I'm showing you on the left-hand side is a distribution of seismograph stations in this region. As you can see, Vancouver Island, as well as the lower mainland of British Columbia and the Washington state, is perhaps one of the places in North America where we have the highest density of seismic stations. And the reason for that is that with this high density of seismic stations, we will be able to locate earthquakes, not only big ones, but also smaller ones. So the Canadian National Seismic Network is operated by Natural Resources Canada to monitor all seismic activities in and around Canada. All earthquake-related information can be obtained online, and we post and update this information as soon as we locate an earthquake. And the website of all this information can be obtained at earthquakescanada.ca, including the earthquake catalogs, both local and regional and national scale. And by locating all these smaller earthquakes and combined with the seismological theory and earthquake model, we will be able to tell you the relationship between small earthquakes and the big one. The second evidence I want to show you is the paleoseismological study, which means that based on geological records, we will be able to tell how many big earthquakes had occurred in the past. I'm showing you two photos, one on the left showing these dead trees. On the right-hand side is a profile of the soil in the source region. In this particular case, we realized that there were 13 very large megathrust earthquakes occurred in the past 6,000 years. So if you divided that, on average, we have about 1 megathrust earthquake per 500 years. And that's where the 500 years comes from. But I have to remind you that the range is actually very large, so that it's not precisely 500 years we got one. Finally, I'm showing you that we also have evidence from the GPS measurements showing that the part of Vancouver Island is moving westward with respect to the interior of the North America continent. As you can see from the right-hand side, the movement of this station on Vancouver Island with respect to North America is very clear. And this is what we think what is happening right now. We think the two plates, the North America plate and the Huangtifuca plate, is currently locked along their interface. And because it's locked, when the Huangtifuca plate subducts beneath the North America plate, it drags the tip of the North America plate down, and therefore cause the part of the Vancouver Island to rise and push it westward toward the interior. When this locking process eventually exceeds the strength of the rock material and unlock, that's when the megathrust earthquake occurs. And that's when we will have this huge earthquake, the big one. So finally, I want to summarize my talk today. First of all, I'd like to remind you, we have small earthquakes almost every day. We have damaging earthquakes that are decades apart. We also have the world's largest earthquakes that occur a century apart. This is a earthquake mask, an artifact collected by the UBC Museum of Anthropology. And this is our Aboriginal people's characterization of how they view earthquakes. obviously seems very horrified event for them. But from knowing when and where and how earthquake occurred, the best important thing that we want to do is to be well prepared for their occurrences. Know what to do before, during, and after earthquake. I'm showing you a list of websites that have all the information that can help you to be well prepared. And I think that will be I will conclude my talk. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Han. Next on our agenda will be a presentation from Stephen Watson of BC Hydro. Stephen will be providing information on the BC Hydro Campbell River Dam system, and he will also be discussing BC Hydro's dam safety program, recent seismic study results and information, and provide an overview of BC Hydro's capital project plans that will help mitigate and reduce the risks associated with a major earthquake. Stephen has a master's degree in community and regional land use planning from UBC and has worked for BC Hydro for about 24 years. For the past 15 years, he has worked in community relations and capital project communications. He has worked closely with the Campbell River community over those 15 years on many BC Hydro initiatives and projects. He lives in Anoose Bay and works out of the Nanaimo, BC Hydro office. Please welcome Stephen Watson.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for coming today. There's a number of us from BC Hydro and we're very pleased the city and the regional district and EMBC and others are here collaboratively to talk about earthquakes and dam safety and being prepared. So BC Hydro was a sponsor for the Shakeout exercise in October. I certainly encourage you to check out that website and be prepared. There's a lot of really good information there. It happens mid-October each year. So first and foremost, in keeping our system safe, a really important message is that nothing changed 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago, or even when the facilities were built. They're as safe today as when they were built. In fact, if not, maybe a little bit safer because we've been doing upgrades to our facilities over the decades. But it's important to say that day to day, these facilities are safe. So BC Hydro has a comprehensive dam safety program, and we have a number of dams across the system, 23 watersheds. We have real-time information, instrumentation like piezometers that take readings on the dams. Which is very informative for us. We have decades of dam safety upgrades and maintenance. We did work on the John Hart Dam, Middle Earthville Dam in the 1980s. It's a point that we've been looking at our dams for many years. We also have independent reviews every 7 to 10 years for our larger dams and other dams in the system. So that's drilling investigations and assessments of those dams to determine how they compare to provincial and national guidelines and if there's a need for upgrades. We also had a independent audit of our program, and we were given a green rating or a good rating, which we like, but we need to keep at it to make sure our dams are safe. So this is a picture of the Campbell River system, and we have here is the main reservoir. It's Upper Campbell Buttle Lake. About 75% of the water inflows come into this reservoir. Then downstream we have the Lower Campbell Reservoir and then the John Hart system. So analogy for water volumes is that for Strathcona it's a bathtub, Lower Campbell is a bucket, and John Hart Reservoir is a teacup. So here's a picture of the John Hart Dam built in the 1940s. It's just over 800 meters long, mixture of earthfill and concrete. Then we have the Adore Dam. Adore impounds Lower Campbell Reservoir and McIver Lake. It's a concrete dam founded on bedrock. And then we have the largest dam on Vancouver Island. Strathcona Dam is about 54 meters high and about half a kilometer long. So we have, as I mentioned, we've been looking at investments in our facilities. Just a couple of recent examples. We upgraded the 3 spillway gates at each dam, so 9 spillway gates. We did that in 2006 and 2007. It's a picture in the bottom right there of one of those gates. So let's make sure they're reliable, especially when we have water flows like we've had this past week, to make sure they're working. We've also did work on the intake tower, which is just upstream of Strathcona Dam. It passes water through the dam to the generating station. And we installed some large steel rods through that structure to anchor it to bedrock and put rollers on the access bridge so it can move in an earthquake. It was the highest risk that we had, and so we dealt with that in 2010. We also did work on the north earthfill section of the John Hart Dam a number of years ago. So the previous presentation talked about earthquakes in detail, and we've all been expecting it. We don't know when. And BC Hydro's information of what the ground motions may be like was getting outdated around 2007. So a decision within BC Hydro was made to better understand what the ground movements would be. And so we initiated a $10 million study over 6 years with BC Hydro folks, but most importantly, a lot of independent specialists and experts to decide, and they all had to decide on what that model would look like. So we basically were the first hydroelectric utility in North America to do that. We're very proud of this study, and more importantly, we know exactly, well, we have an idea of what the ground motions will be once we get a major earthquake. So we took that information and then we applied it with further investigation of each of our facilities to see what those risks were like. So our goal all the way along is to retain water behind our dams in the event of a major earthquake. So that's always a priority. Sure, they're going to get some damage, but we want those dams to stay in place. So our goal is to be prepared for a 1 in 10,000 year event. We have a 10-year capital plan. We're into it already with the John Hart Generating Station Replacement Project, and beyond that, 20 years plus, to deal with the seismic risks that we've identified for the system. But there's interim risks. The 2 earthfill dams on this system may not withstand a major earthquake. In fact, we're concerned they may not, and that's why we're here partly today to advise you of that. It's unlikely they would fail completely, but the worst case scenario is they could, and water could arrive downstream quickly. So we've been working very closely with the city, the regional district, Emergency Management BC on providing this information, and that's part of why we're here today. So a little bit about the Campbell projects. There's 3 of them: the Generating Station Replacement Project, followed by the John Hart Dam Safety Upgrade Project, followed by, or starting around, the Strathcona Dam Safety Upgrade Project. So right now, a lot of people refer to the John Hart Dam Project, which is going on right now. We're actually not doing anything to the dam. This is all basically downstream of it. And so with this project, we're replacing the 3 wood stave pipelines, or this pipelines that go 1.8 kilometers from the dam down to the generating station. Those will be removed. The intake where the water passes into those penstocks will be plugged. And in its place, we'll have a deep underground tunnel about 100 meters below the surface. It'll be moved over to the spillway dam, drawing water from there. So currently, we draw water near the surface of the reservoir. This one will be quite deep, and it allows us to actually do work to the dam itself, to be able to draw down the reservoir to do work on the dams. The other element is the city of water. The city of Campbell River draws basically all its water supply from this reservoir. They currently draw it from the penstock. So if we had an earthquake today, we'd likely draw down the reservoir to protect it, and the city would have no water. So we developed a partnership with them where they're building their own intake. Should be in place around 2017. So it's also below that drawdown zone, so the city's water supply is secure. This is a picture of from a picture in the surge towers, looking at the work happening at the generating station. So just upstream of that, we have 2 underground tunnels or portals on either side of the penstocks. They're going deep underground, so we'll be into the tunneling very shortly. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a replacement generating station. So basically, the dam is on the other side of the hill here. The water is coming towards us and past us to the generating station. But all this work will be in rock and seismically very strong, and basically online around 2018. So with the John Hart Dam Upgrade Project, we just initiated it. We just introduced it with First Nations and stakeholders through our Community Liaison Committee. We're very early stages. It's going to take a few years to determine exactly what we're going to do. There's a number of components to it, but the main work is to upgrade the earthfill sections of the dam. And I think we just did some investigative drilling to start things off in October. But certainly, once you have an idea on the scope, we'll go to the BC Utilities Commission. other regulatory processes as required, and determine how the project to proceed. It could start as early as 2019, and will certainly be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the Lador Dam, which I referenced. It's basically safe from a seismic point of view. This is the Strathcona Dam, and there's a number of elements of here that's going to take place over a period of time. So the first thing is we're going to construct a low-level outlet, or a deep tunnel, that will go around the dam and deep into the reservoir. Currently, the spillway on the top right there is quite high up in the reservoir, so you get an earthquake when it's down low, we're really going to be unable to pass water, assuming the intake to the generating station could be taken out of service. So we want to be able to evacuate the water as soon as we can following an earthquake. We'll also look at removing the intake tower and moving controls up to the crest of the dam. We'll also relocate the generating station, and that'll allow us to put a downstream berm to widen that dam to make it stronger in the event of an earthquake. And we'll also be doing upgrades to the spillway gates so they're seismically strong. But that's a 10, 20 years plus project all in. So we have a good dam safety program. We have better knowledge of earthquakes. We have interim risks until these upgrades are in place, so we have a plan for that. These studies validate our plans. When we go to the Utilities Commission, they're going to want to know why we're doing these projects, and this explains this for public safety. So we do have a long-term plan for these three capital projects. It's education and collaboration, and of course, a lot of local jobs for 20-odd years. Just briefly on emergency preparedness. So these evacuation area maps that you've seen are actually nothing new. They've been in place for decades. We have tabletop exercises with emergency responders every 2-3 years. So we have different maps on different flood events, different dam breaches, but what you're going to see is basically the worst case scenario. But my point is that these plans in place for a long time. So what kind of an earthquake is going to put these dams at risk? So just as I say the dams are safe, it is a major earthquake that's going to cause the integrity of these dams to be in question. So a lot of damage to buildings, you'd likely not be able to stand. It's a big event. There'd be a lot of damage within the city of Campbell River itself. So this is more of a regional map. There's two brochures, two maps. On the far left is the Strathcona Dam. You can see a little bit of the red there, and then as you go out to the reservoir, you go to the right to the city of Campbell River and the estuary in darker red. And as I say, this is a worst case scenario of both a John Hart and or Strathcona Dam failure of where the water could go, how quickly. And so in the pink is a Strathcona Dam failure, also in red down below. But there's one thing that may surprise you, it's not all going to go through Campbell River. Part of it's going to go to the north through Loveland Bay and to Mohan Creek. So that water would arrive in about 2.5 hours and could be 16 meters deep. So it would likely take out the highway bridge that's there. This is a close-up of the city of Campbell River. So we have the John Hart Dam and the penstocks there in the kind of top left. And the modeling there shows that water about 20 meters deep could arrive in up to 20 minutes. And then the red is 30 to 60 minutes. The depth of the water is about 11 meters near the river. And then as you go out, 2 to 3 meters. On the bottom left, the pinker color, that's a Strathcona Dam failure, and that's about 2.5 hours for that water to arrive. But I have to stress that this is a major earthquake, and in the unlikely event that the dams fail very quickly, this is how quickly the water would arrive. Certainly one of our protocols is to immediately open the spillway gates of John Hart Dam to lower that water, to ease the pressure on the dam. So it's one of the first things we're going to do. But still, we need to plan for the worst case scenario. Lastly, as been pointed out, there's always risk to our facilities from an earthquake point of view, which we think will be mitigated in 20 plus years. But unfortunately, when we put this slide together, we didn't think we'd be almost living it this week. There are subtropical storms, a series of them that can hit the watershed. There's king tides, storm surges, the winds, they push the water into the estuary. The Quinsam River is uncontrolled, and so it can be challenging. So these are pictures taken yesterday of the spill from Lador Dam, top right, and the bottom left is a release from John Hart Dam. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Our final presentation for the session this afternoon will be from Howie Siemens, who is the Protective Services Coordinator with the Strathcona Regional District and the Emergency Program Coordinator for the City of Campbell River. Howie will be providing an overview of emergency planning within Campbell River and the surrounding area, as well as the response process that would be activated in the event of a major earthquake. Howie's been with the Strathcona Regional District for the past 6 years. In his role, he has been pivotal in the development and maintenance of regional emergency program delivery based on the pillars of emergency management, which are preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation and prevention. During an emergency, Howie plays a key role in supporting the Emergency Operations Center directors for both the Strathcona Regional District as well as the City of Campbell River. And with that, I'll ask Howie to come up, and please help me welcome him up.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm going to obviously wear my emergency program hat already, and if we do have any kind of emergency event that does occur, I've been working with the Time Mark Theater here, and they've informed me that you'll see the exit signs around the room. We'll be going out those, and we'd like everybody to meet in the Spirit Square so that we can get a head count. They actually do a head count as you come in. So that out of the way, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our emergency preparedness program for the city and the Strathcona Regional District. So my role basically is to look at what the hazards are in British Columbia and main focused in our Strathcona Regional District and the city of Campbell River. When I first got into this field, they told me that there's about over 57 hazards to address within in emergency management and disasters, and I kind of went, wow. I used to have a nice dark head of hair on my head, and been doing this for a while now, and it's turning gray. But as I've learned over the years, it's good things to don't take it all in at once and focus your what's going to happen. Kind of what events are going to occur. Seasonally or monthly, and then break that down and make things a little more manageable. So some of that part of that is for you to hear as well as when I start talking about your part of preparedness. So as I said, there's 57 hazards, and I do look at breaking them down. These are some pictures of, obviously the picture of the earthquake house is not from our area, but the flooding and the fires and obviously some of you may know about the sinking of the cruise ship in the harbor. So these are hazards that I have to look at, and with the team in the city and regional district, we try to address. So how do we do that? How do we get ready for what potential hazards and events that may occur? We get together and we look at the 4 pillars of emergency management, as Ron has said already, and you'll see the circle on the screen there. And we do exercises. We look at what hazards are going to occur. So as Ron said also, is what just happened with us with the storm event has come forward. We start looking at this issue in August and September because we want to know preparedness of, do we have our staff trained? Do we need an exercise, a tabletop, to ensure that we're ready for what may occur? And I'll be honest with you right now, we can't predict everything 100%. It's a disaster that nature or maybe man-made creates, and we can't fully know the scope of that. So we do our best to plan, think of what issues could occur, with focusing basically at public safety first, and then what kind of key infrastructure we need to get back up and operational so that we can help those people. So we look at people first, and then other hazards, how we address other hazards afterwards. So you see the group of people in a colored vest. We work under a command structure then with vests, so we have an organization that we can follow and keep on task. As you can imagine, if you're in a workforce and you have busy schedules and multitasking, well, you just imagine what that could be like during actual disaster when things are being thrown at us every minute. We have a team that gets together and we start planning and working together as a team collaboratively. And you'll see that today with the work that has been done with the regional district and the city and the BC Hydro on this dam awareness. And I mean the dam, John Hart, and the other dam awareness. So emergency preparedness. So this is a really key message. When I again got into this field, I thought it was all on my shoulders to make sure that everybody in the community and the local governments were ready. Actually, it's everybody's responsibility. Where we share responsibility. It was great to see a lot of residents when I went out and did some field assessment, situational awareness with these floods that were occurring, isolated floods. And people I had talked to previous years or actually had pumps in place. They had their grab-and-go kits ready. So it's really good to see that messaging finally getting out there, that it is all our responsibilities prepared for any kind of disaster. And I'll be talking a little bit more on that as I go on that. As large events could overwhelm us, so that if we have a major earthquake, we'll be turning to other local resources. We'll also turning up to the province, Emergency Management BC. They are there for us to support us, and they've been doing that for the last several days, supporting multiple communities in Vancouver Island and in the province dealing with this weather pattern that it just went through. We have lots of volunteers. There are volunteers from our emergency support services here today at the front door. So go up and meet them afterwards. That will assist you in the community to provide immediate needs. And then we'll look at the federal government. The Emergency Management BC could turn to the federal government for more further assistance. So what do you need to do? Be better prepared is you need to know the risks. And so what we do, part of my jobs, I do go out and do public presentations. I come out to your social clubs, to your churches, and I try to identify what those hazards may be for you in your homes. And today it's about earthquake and the severe weather patterns. But snow, driving on the highway, the inland highway in the middle of winter, car breaks down in a blizzard. Are you prepared for that? You're there being able to respond or be able to stay there for 2 or 3 hours on your own. So what I do in my job is I look at the hazards, which ones are occurring, and then what ones most recently happened. So Hong had mentioned that we do have a history of earthquakes, so I do focus on that a lot. And then how often do they occur is a focus that we do. And what I'm hearing now and what I see from experts is our climate change is going to be one that we need to look at quite seriously because we're seeing more intense rainfall in short periods of time. So then that moves up my radar is trying to provide preparedness messaging on that. So today I'm just kind of talking a little bit about the earthquake and severe weather because those are the kind of the things that are on our forefront right here with this presentation. The slide you'll see with the 48-hour accumulation period, that's actually a live slide. Those are the numbers. I hope you can see them. But that's actually what occurred in the last couple days for us in the rainstorm. So you'll see numbers in the Comox Valley of 106, the 154 in Squamish. So we had huge rainfalls. And I'm sure you were all following the Comox Valley situation with their flooding events from that situation. So what are some of the potential impacts for a major earthquake? And I'm not going to sort of add more to what Stephen has said, but there are things basically we need to think about what happens to the ground around an earthquake. So we may have a liquefaction in the Campbell River area. There may be some bank collapse. Roads will be collapsed or disrupted from an earthquake. I'm not trying to scare you in this process of doing this. What I'm trying to do is bring it to your attention that if you're going to get out, which is one of our messages after an earthquake is drop, cover, and hold on, and I'll talk about that as well, is that be aware of what things might be happening outside of the building that you're in before you go out. And that's why I'm talking about these slides right now. There may be down power lines that you'd be aware of, and they could be live. And this stuff, I can, we provide that information. We do have some brochures at the back on the table to offer you as well. So a little bit about the earthquake is during an earthquake is what a really important message, and Shakeout BC was identified on Stephen's slide, is the drop, cover, and hold as what we teach in British Columbia and North America and many countries overseas. This is the key message, is the reason why we want you to drop, cover, and hold is if it's a large event that Hung has explained to us is that you're going to be being shaken around all over the place, and it's best to get down on the ground so that you don't fall or get slammed into something, and getting under something solid, or if you can't, getting beside something that's solid. So you're protected. Most BC homes are safe from an earthquake. They'll survive the earthquake. What usually injures people, and we know this from New Zealand and Christchurch, is that it's the hazards that are happening afterwards, the things that are falling off the shelves or lighting falling down to the ground and dangling, and that's what they usually get injured from. So that's why it's really important to do that. We also, when you're outside, is looking for objects around you and making sure that you're safe, that you don't duck down under a live or a power line as your safe spot. I was in Vancouver a few days ago walking around, and another EPC said to me, Howie, so let's just look up, and if an earthquake happened right now, where would you go? And I said, well, you know what, I'll just start kissing the earth below me, and I'll get down and drop, cover, and hold, because sometimes there may not be any options when you're downtown Vancouver. One of the things we learned also, if you're in a vehicle, is you're wanting to pull over and stop. We used to promote this message: just pull over as quickly as you can, or stop as quickly as you can. From Christchurch, we are now informing people that look for hazards before you pull over, making sure there's no live power lines or buildings above you that may collapse. What to do after an earthquake? This OK sign is actually a help on the other side, and the Campbell River Emergency Support Services volunteers in the back. You can stop by their booth. They'll hand this out. This is very key for us in our emergency response. When fire departments and RCMP or our search and rescue crews go out, if they see an OK sign in your window or in your business, they know that you're okay. You do not need any more assistance, and they'll go by your home and look at a home that may not have a sign displayed, and they'll start on those homes first. So this was a document that can be provided to you at the end of this presentation. We work with this right now with the Emergency Management BC, and we know where a lot of the earthquake issues are for tsunami and stuff like that. So we would really want you to be informed about that. So coming into the Strathcona Regional Logistics webpage or the Emergency Management BC's web page is a good place to get that information. We want you to stay off the phones and internet as much as possible, because it ties up a lot of the key responders information. And the other thing is that we want you to have a radio ready. It's amazing how many people have actually called me during an event and said, I didn't get any information. And I said, well, where were you? Well, I was outside in my car, but I didn't know where to get information. Turn on a radio, because we're going to be broadcasting information, and spin the dial, because I've worked with several media outlets here in the city and in a regional district, and just spin the dial till you find a station, because we're going to broadcast as far and wide as we possibly can. Don't just pick one station and wait for it to come on the air. What can you do to be better prepared? Well, its key thing is having an emergency plan for your family or business. We do have documents that we can make available for you to do that. Understand how are you going to communicate with those your loved ones? How are you going to connect if there's no phone lines? What evacuation and meeting spots that you may have predetermined to where you're going to go. One of the other key things is what we really want you to do is go home today, and if you haven't one already, is start creating a preparedness kit. A family one or a key one. What we really focus on is a grab and go. So if we come along and knock on your door and say you've got 30 minutes, as Stephen has identified in the slide and on the map, is that you can grab that at your back door or somewhere convenient as you're running out the door, and you save a whole lot of time with getting key information and documentation with you, and you'll be able to take care of yourself up to 72 hours to a week. Having an emergency communication plan, again, is very key. So I've talked a little about this already. So one of the things that I've been finding, a lot of people are going on to smartphones and not having a landline. Still encourage you in our world to have at least a landline service there of some kind, because usually the landlines will stay connected longer than possibly a cell tower. Or you may just lose a cell connection. So having a landline is really important. Have an out-of-town contact, because sometimes the long-distance lines will be more available than the local ones, because us emergency responders may take those lines over for our needs. And the biggest thing now is everybody's getting on social media and doing Twitter and Facebook page. And you know what? I'm very support of that, because it takes very little data to transfer a tweet. And if you set it on your Facebook page and you post it once, everybody who's your friend and family will know that you're safe or you're not. And that's a quick way to inform a large group of people. So again, there's different styles of emergency kits. I just wanted to give you a quick visual of these right now. If you're wanting more information about these, again, please visit our volunteers in the back from the Emergency Support Services. They're very knowledgeable about this as well. They present with me all the time. So what it is that you need to really do to become prepared yourselves, and we do this as emergency responders as well. 3 simple steps basically to do that is to know your risks, to make a plan and get a kit ready. So thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with you today and provide you this information. Again, I really encourage you to take an opportunity to stop at the back and speak with our volunteers about more preparedness information. Thank you.
Thanks, Howie. So that concludes the first half of today's session, and what we're going to do now is take a short break, and that'll allow us to get our change the stage here and allow us to set up with the panel of experts. During this time, though, feel free to take a look at the information in the lobby. There is a question and answer sheet in the lobby as well, which may answer some of your questions regarding information that you've seen here today. Take a copy, and it also has on it contact information that may be of use to you if you have additional questions that aren't answered today. So we'll be about 10 minutes. Take some time, jot down. As I explained earlier, this portion of our session provides you with the opportunity to ask specific questions about any of the information that you've heard today. We just want to remind you again, we also developed a question and answer sheet that tries to anticipate questions that you may have, but we recognize that you may have more. And the questions that you ask today will help us to build and develop that question and answer sheet for the benefit of others as well. So I'm going to start off by introducing our panel of experts, and I'll start on my far right, your far left. And we have Ralph Morhan. He's the Assistant Director of Operations with Emergency Management BC. Seated next to him is Howie Siemens with the Strathcona Regional District Emergency Management Program. Next to him is Chris O'Reilly, Executive Vice President of Generation with BC Hydro. Seated next to him is Stephen Rigby, Director of Dam Safety with the BC Hydro. And then Stephen Watson with BC Hydro, and our first presenter, Ho Kao with Natural Resources Canada. So I have a mobile mic, and what I'll do is I'll come down to the floor, and if there are questions, just raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you to ensure that everybody can hear the question, and then we'll direct it to the appropriate panel expert. So who's first out of the gate?
First question I got is about business continuity planning for when the dam goes. What's going to happen to our drinking supply here in Campbell River? But how long can we expect? How long are we going to end up having to wait before we have water back?
Well, why don't I'll start and ask the city probably too. Howie, do you want to speak in detail to the? I want to talk about one of the benefits of the project that we're working on is the security of the drinking water supply. So right now the penstocks, the drinking water comes off the penstocks down near the surge towers, and the penstocks in particular are an extremely fragile part of the system. And the issue is you can have a differential movement between the intake at the penstocks and the penstocks themselves, and they can shear off right up at the dam. And one of my first jobs in hydro was working at John Hart, and I worked on a contingency plan to do a repair and a fix of the penstocks in the event of that, so I have a little bit of knowledge of that. And one of the benefits of the project is that we are separating the intake, as Stephen said, and we're going to have a separate water intake that pulls water from the at a deeper point in the reservoir, and we won't be reliant on that really weak part of the infrastructure we have. In the interim, that is a significant risk that we're carrying, and fortunately, it's a relatively low frequency risk, and we've lived with it for 67 years. So we've got 4 more years where we're exposed to that. But I don't know, Howie, if you want to have a specific comment about that.
Yeah, so part of that is we know this risk, and part of our emergency planning is we look at trying to address that. So we actually have a water loss contingency plan, emergency guideline plan with the city. So, and that's just not about loss of water from the hydro project, but also contaminated water. So if something goes in, an airplane crashes in the reservoir, what are we going to do when we've lost water and we have no options to boil? So some of that is working with where we go under a task number for Emergency Management BC, and we would probably bring in, our plan is to bring in, truck in water supplies, bottled water sources and stuff like that to supply most of the community. this is also part of my emergency preparedness messaging is that if you have your kits at home, if it's an inconvenience of a few days or a week, at least you have your own water supplies already pre-planned.
Okay, thanks. We'll move to the next question.
Thank you. My question is, where is Campbell River's second source of water? And I don't mean after I drank my 72 hours worth of water and saved up plastic bottles. There is obviously McIver Lake, but I probably can't get there because Campbell River has been washed out along with our water main, I would assume, on this horrific earthquake we're going to have. What other place, known source, today, could I go get drinking water?
So we do have a couple of resources where we would have local spots where we'd go and feed water into the system. I'm going to sort of turn this to Ron, this question as the operations manager. He has a lot more detail in the sort of the detailed information about that part of the plan. Is my role is to really make sure there's plans in place. So Ron, would you be able to address that?
Sure, I can try. One of the things that I think we all recognize as emergency responders is that it's impossible for us to anticipate exactly what any one single or multiple event is going to create in terms of challenges for the community. And that's why there's multiple levels of response available. At a local level, depending on the severity of the event, the city tries to manage and ensure that the community is maintained with a water supply. And obviously our main water supply is coming down the Campbell River, whether that's through the John Hart Lake, McIver Lake, or elsewhere, but that is our main source of water. In the event that that supply is compromised and we are not able to restore it, that's where the emergency response program comes into play. And we can bring in resources at a regional level, provincial level, or federal level to restore and get a water supply back in place for the community during the crisis. Yeah, and like I said, the main, your question was specifically where's the water coming from? The water would be from the Campbell River system.
We're talking about an event that happened, and we have to assume, and we probably correctly, that the water coming out of the dam is gone. Campbell River no longer has a water system. I'm asking you today, in the event of the future, where we get our water. And to say we're going to truck it out and have plastic bottled water is not an answer. That's just right out of the provincial guidelines. I have like 72 bottles of water. But here I'm living right by lakes, little rivers down the way. Maybe I should go down the Oyster River to get my water. I'm asking you which is the safest place. And we're going to get it trucked in?
I'm going to try to add on some more information. So in the response, our first goal is to public safety and providing the immediate needs of the residents. So that would be our first plan, was to provide a resource, just like they have done in Christchurch in New Zealand and Japan. That's the only opportunity they had, was to bring in that resource by truck and resources like that. If you are wanting to be fully prepared and knowing what your sources are, it's not hard to go and find sources and getting water treatments like backpackers do up in the high country. If there's water sources that are available, there are treatments in stores, sporting goods stores, that you can gather water in bucket form or in large containers and cisterns and treat your own water and boil it and have your own water supply. If it's worst case scenario, a catastrophic earthquake, we'll all be scrambling trying to find some kind of resources because the damage is going to be devastating. Again, just look at New Zealand and Christchurch. They are still recovering.
We're all standing around looking for you to tell us where to go get our water. Why don't we all know beforehand?
And that is my messaging. As part of preparedness, your preparedness right now is to look at where you live And if you had no resources of water coming into you, our goal would be to try to provide the community as quickly as possible that water source. However, to take the onus on all of us sharing the responsibility is the message here. And so look in your backyard for a water source. If you're close to the Oyster River and it's safe to go towards that river, then that would be your resource.
Any other questions?
Mine's more of a general question. It comes with a little preamble. When my son in school had some firefighters come in and talk about safety, and you can be sure that after that presentation happened, the amount of smoke alarms in our house doubled due to his insistence. So what I'm wondering is if any of the organizations on the panel, especially the city, what kind of partnerships you have with School District 72, and what kind of education do you provide for the children?
That's one of the most positive part of our program for preparedness messaging. Every year during May, we have an Emergency Preparedness Week, and we partner up with Campbell River Search and Rescue, the Campbell River Fire Department, the Ministry of Forest, the Smoky Bear program, and we actually go into many schools within the Strathcona Regional District area as well as the city, and they allow us to pull all their grade 5 and 6 students into a gymnasium and provide them about an hour of information, and we find that very beneficial for you, and you just confirmed that for us, is that they take that message home and actually help their parents get more prepared. So it's been a very positive partnership, and we're continuing on building on that.
Hi. We have 2 roads into Campbell River going south and one going north. It's been suggested that we head for higher ground. I would think the roads are going to be clogged and there's really no place to go. I don't know where the higher ground is, and I don't know what I do if I leave my building in the case of extreme shaking.
I think I can start with some of that, and then Stephen can probably have more details about the map that we've just offered to the public. I think that's the important part of knowing some of that information. The key basically is to understand where you are in that map, and if an earthquake does occur, and try to look at those pre-plans. You're right. Again, it's going to be a lot of roads and infrastructure. We don't know what's going to be damaged, but thinking about that in advance is really important, and what routes that you may have available. You may have to be walking several kilometers to actually get out of that area. After an earthquake that may be damaged. One of the things is that a lot of the homes that are built in British Columbia are quite seismic, so they usually will not collapse on it, so sometimes it may be safer. If you're in the colored zones of that map, then yes, you'll be looking for routes, of several options for routes to get up to that higher ground. And on that map, it does identify where that high ground is.
Yeah, so basically, until the last week or so, no one really knew what that evacuation area looked like. And so if and when that major earthquake takes place and you survive it and you can get through it, you also need to know there's a potential for water to come. So right now, before, people didn't know that. So now there's an evacuation area map that people need to know, that they should take a route, a plan, whether it's on foot or whatever it may be, to move outside to higher ground, outside of that evacuation area itself.
Just hang on a second.
Thank you. The area that where we live, if anything will happen, there wouldn't be any way for us to get towards town because Bowes Bridge, we live north of Campbell River, which is in Campbellton. So if that ever happened, where we live, there wouldn't be any way for us to get to town. Because, like you said, if the dam ever go or anything like that, for some reason, Bowes Bridge be washed out. So there wouldn't be any way for us to go anywhere from where we're at in Campbellton. So what would happen then?
Well, I mean, for in terms of BC Hydro's facilities, we provided the worst case scenario. You know, major earthquake, bridges and all kinds of infrastructure could be impacted and gone in itself. So, you know, we're going to try to lower the reservoirs to ease that, but we're saying basically in half an hour where you are, water may arrive. So, you know, all we can do is provide the information and work with local municipalities on what that looks like, and so that they can plan. And everyone's going to be different, their routes and where they're going to go. There's actually small little pockets probably within those evacuation areas that people should go. And I think we're just providing that information now, and the city and emergency responders are figuring out and over time develop for better, you know, refine those plans of where people should go.
Stephen, if I can maybe add to that as well. The map that Hydro has provided does certainly identify areas in North Campbell River that may be isolated from the balance of the community. So if there was that worst case scenario, it's quite likely that you wouldn't be able to drive across the bridge anymore. Those connections would be gone. So what's important in those scenarios is to identify the areas that are safe for you to go to during that event. And the overall emergency response plan that will play out after the event will reach out to those pockets of people who are isolated as a result of the emergency. Howie, anything further?
Yeah, my messaging here is a lot about that personal preparedness side. If you can't get in, if you have a family kit, the big garbage can picture that I had on the slide there, if having those kinds of resources or grab and go where you can move to high ground and have some supplies for, you know, 3 days to a week in your backpack kind of style device that you're carrying, that's going to be key, because then at least you can remove yourself from the area of risk and then locate yourself and then find out more communications, because you'll be turning on your radio and hearing where we're trying to tell you to go or we're coming to get you.
Because the area where we live in is like, it's way down, and it's right below by the river where it is, and the dam is way up on stream towards Go River. So the most water will be right down below where we live. So this whole area over there wouldn't be any way for us to go anywhere from there.
And the only thing that I can address with that is that as BC Hydro has informed us that this is the worst case scenario, and we can only plan to that level until the actual event unfolds. We don't know the full aspects of the damage and actually how quickly it will really arrive.
Any other questions?
I'm listening to this discussion about the dam breaking, and I'm wondering if there is given any thought to putting something like a floodgate up around the Bud Lake Narrows that would cut off about half of the water coming downstream. And I guess the other thing it would also do is isolate the tailings that would come out of the mine when that whole tailings pile collapses too, in that 1 in a 1,000-year event.
Yeah, I think the BC Hydro doesn't have any responsibility on the mine. And Stephen, I don't know, do you want to talk about the 3 dams and how that?
Sure. So there are different ways that the water will flow off of the system, and part of the inundation map shows that some of the water will go down Loveland Bay, down that route. One of the options as a last resort, if we find the dams are damaged and we believe over the couple of days that we're getting worried about them, we could go in and decide to open up more of a passage and let water out Loveland Bay as a release valve. That would be one option. It would really depend on the circumstances at the time.
Thank you. My question is two questions. There's supposedly 30 minutes, dam breaks, 30 minutes, Campbell River is flooded. If it's flooded in 30 minutes, is there a warning system that's going to warn the people, here it's coming, the water's coming? Is that going to be sirens at the fire hall? Or is there, after this flood of 30 meters or whatever of water, how long do you think it's going to stay flooded?
I'll talk a little about the so-called warning. The first course of action is that people know about it. So it's an education program, why people are here today. So they see the evacuation areas, they know what it looks like, potentially worst case scenario. The other thing that's been discussed, well, should there be a siren system? Like Port Alberni, they have a warning system for tsunamis. Should there be something in Campbell River, some kind of warning system that would go? The challenge there is that that's going to be a community decision. The City of Campbell River and others, and BC Hydro will be part of that discussion. So we'll see where that goes and within the community. The other element is, will it work? Right? You know, you get a major earthquake, a lot of destruction. We wouldn't want people to consider, well, the warning siren didn't go off, so I'm not going to go. So, you know, we need to see what that looks like.
So Stephen, can I just add a little bit more to that? So what the scenario that we're talking about today for the dam system is a major earthquake that will impact it. A major earthquake, and Hong, correct me if I'm wrong, but that will be severe damage, and I bet you we would not be able to stand on our feet, so we'd be actually thrown to the ground probably. That should be our warning, that if you're in those areas that have been colored on the map, is don't wait for a fire department or a siren to go off. Mother Nature's just giving you a warning.
I'd like to add a little bit more regarding this early warning system. In fact, the early warning system is a proven technology in many other countries already. And Natural Resources Canada is currently working with the United States, especially all the states along the West Coast, like Washington, Oregon, and California, to establish a consistent earthquake early warning system for the West Coast. This is an ongoing project that we are trying to establish. The idea about the early warning system, however, is not necessarily sending a message to individuals, because we are talking about a warning, depending on the location of the earthquake, we are talking about a warning anywhere between 10, 20 seconds to maybe up to 1.5 minutes. So it's not the kind of way long warning that you are thinking of. So this kind of early warning system usually works very well for emergency shutdown process, like the nuclear power plants or bullet trains, or for those surgeons who are in the middle of doing some delicate surgeries, that kind of thing. This is the purpose of the early warning system. And as I shown in my talk, we're talking about major earthquakes here. So when we define the kind of damage that can possibly damage a dam or induce a tsunami, the most obvious sign is that the intensity of ground shaking will be so severe that you cannot stand. So this is the rule of thumb. If the shaking is big enough that you have a difficulty standing, then that's the sign for you to go up to the higher ground. It doesn't matter if the tsunami or the dam will break or not. There's always the possibility if the shaking is so strong that you cannot stand. So that's the kind of message we would like to send out as a general rule of thumb.
Other questions? Okay, we've got one more over here.
I noticed none of the discussion's been about the risk of tsunamis in this community, and I'm also wondering with the dam flooding and the tsunami, whether it even makes sense for the city to continue doing any development in the lower lying areas of the community.
I'm not quite sure the question was. It was about the tsunami. Do you think the dam was creating a tsunami? And
Is there a tsunami risk?
I don't think there is.
The tsunami risk, I think this is, I'm going to throw this to emergency management BC as well to add, but the information that we have right now, that we are very low risk of a tsunami. It would be residual waves that would be coming from any kind of earthquake on the west coast. Anything that comes from the mainland of an earthquake would be very minor. So
Yeah, this is not my area of expertise. However, that's pretty well bang on. The inner east coast line of Vancouver Island is, generally speaking, limited tsunami risk.
I'll try to answer this. Whoops, sorry. I'll try to answer this, and then again, I may turn to Ron, the operations manager for the city. Again, this has been shared that this is not going to happen. You know, it's not going to be a multiple events. The risk is we do have earthquakes a lot. And it's going to be. It's still not going to happen. It's not to be sort of an event that's going to occur very often. It's a very rare occasion that this is going to happen. So if we live on a fear of that all the time and not, sort of enjoy where we live, we can make the choice to move out of those based on that risk factor. Yeah. But we all move close to the water because of the beauty, and it's nice to see that shoreline. And that's the choices we make. But now today, for the first time, you know the risk fully, and you can make that decision if you're wanting to develop in Campbell River. I think it's smart to still continue to do so.
Yeah, if I wouldn't mind just adding to that, and I won't speak to the city's development plans, but I guess I appreciate this is a difficult conversation, right? Because we're talking about our homes and our neighborhoods and our personal security, and so we recognize the concern, and I think that's frankly why we put so much effort into having the discussion today. And just say a couple things about the dams. The dams have been there for many years, and they provide a lot of benefits to all of us beyond the power. They provide drinking water. They provide some flood protection, as we've enjoyed this week. And so they're important infrastructure. And the dams have been upgraded numerous times over the years. So they are, in fact, as Stephen said, I would go stronger and say they are more robust and secure than they were the day they were built by a good margin. We do have better information about the seismic risk in the province, and we all live in a seismic zone, and this is one of the more pressing seismic zones in the province. And as a result of that, we have plans to continue to upgrade the dams over time, and we've started in on that, and Stephen talked about the projects that have been done, and the projects that are in train, and I would add to that, it's not possible to do all the projects at once. For various reasons, they have to be sequenced, so that's part of the challenge. And I would say that every time you get one done, we've got a bit of a benefit of a risk improvement. We've had risk improvements from those projects that were finished, and we talked about the drinking water. That's another risk improvement that will be done. But if I put aside the future risk reductions, even today we are talking about extreme events. We're talking about earthquakes that threaten the dams that have we call it a return frequency of 1 in 1,000 years, right? So that's a lot of lifetimes for people. So we're not here to declare an emergency, and we're not suggesting that people change their lives. I think what we're doing is we're saying we should spend some time working on a plan, spend some time thinking about what we would do, and then kind of put that aside and go about our lives. And I think it's important that the community has done a lot in terms of emergency planning, and we're obviously doing a lot in terms of improving infrastructure, but we all live in a seismic zone, as you saw from Han's photo, one of the kind of worst in the world, and we all got to kind of square with that. But I think the important thing to do is to develop a plan, get ready, and then just go on with our lives. And that would be my kind of message that I want to leave you with today.
It's something that I heard and it's been in my mind, so I just want to get it off my mind. I heard that BC Hydro has purchased a bunch of houses along the side of the river. Is it true?
I think you're talking about our plans for Jordan River. So maybe I'll just step back from that. So we finished this seismic hazard study for the whole province, and we looked at all the sites for our dams. And in general, we spent 6 years on that, and we had all the best scientists in North America working on that, scientists from that field. And in general, the news for the province was pretty good in that for most of the province, and certainly on the piece in the Columbia where we have most of our facilities, and in the Lower Mainland where we have a lot of infrastructure, the risk either, the seismic hazard risk either stayed the same or went down. And we have 3 areas where it went up, and here was one where really the duration of the earthquakes, you know, the calculated earthquakes or the forecast earthquakes we have are longer in duration and therefore put more stress on the infrastructure. We have concerns in the Bridge River area near Lillooet, and we have concerns in the Jordan River area down on the southwest corner of Vancouver Island. So, you know, our plan here in Campbell River is to continue on with our capital plan and upgrades, and in parallel to that, we're having this conversation about emergency preparedness and just trying to raise awareness of people of, you know, that they should be prepared. In Bridge River, we're actually lowering the level of one of our reservoirs at the LaJoy Dam, and what that does is takes the risk away and allows us to put off an upgrade there because we've got lots of projects that we have to get done. So if we can put one off, that's great. And then in Jordan River, we have a special situation where the seismic risk has gone up a lot, and it's actually about double the earthquake hazard that we see here, and it's by far the highest in the province. And we've got downstream of that dam, there's 11 homes, and what we're proposing to do, I guess the other thing is we don't have we have looked at the dam and studied the dam, and we don't have a good solution to get it upgraded to the new earthquake calculation that we have. And we've looked at lowering the reservoir, and we need the dam there and the power it produces. It's a big part of supplying Lower Vancouver Island and Victoria. And there's 11 homes that downstream of that dam, and we are proposing to buy those houses. And we started that discussion with the folks there last Thursday, and tomorrow we're going to drive down and have a public meeting down there. But it is a special case given it's just a massive earthquake that we're forecasting, and if you saw Han's charts, the reason for that, it's right next to the offshore fault, right? It's in a really tough spot, you know, on the edge of the Wanda-Fuca Plate. So that's what you may have heard there.
What about like, you know, where the bridge, the wood bridge down in Campbellton, from there to where the River Sportsman is?
Sorry,
what about all those houses in between the wood bridge from the old logging road?
Yeah.
Into the one by the old bridge in Campbellton? What about all those houses along the side of the river there? Why?
You're asking if we would buy those houses? Yeah, we're not proposing to do that. And again, it's just it's a different seismic risk here than down in Jordan River, and we do have a plan to upgrade the dams, and you know, and we think it's appropriate to work on the emergency plans and go from there. So we don't think buying a bunch of properties up here is the right thing to do.
Okay, well, if that is the end of the questions, we'll close off the session for the afternoon. And before I say the last little words, I'm going to ask Chris O'Reilly or perhaps you just want to speak?
Yeah, I'll just stay here. I just want to thank, maybe I'll start with you, Ron. I appreciate your leadership on the issue and for emceeing the event today. We appreciate the work of the city and the regional district and Howie and his folks, the folks from Emergency Management BC who have been helping us as well. We have a long relationship with the community of Campbell River, and we value that relationship very highly. And we've seen the benefit of it in the planning of the John Hart project, and Stephen spoke about the stakeholder committee that we have, and we have a better project now as a result of the input that we got through the stakeholder engagement committee, and we want to carry that on with the ongoing projects and future projects that we have on the Campbell system. We've had very close cooperation, as we always do, during the recent flood event, as we have in past events. And you all know our man in Vancouver Island, Stephen Watson, and behind him there's a very capable team of planners who figure out how to operate the reservoirs in these challenging circumstances, and our dam safety folks who are out doing extra surveillance, our environment folks who are watching the implications of the flows, and the operations staff who are out there operating the gates, and you would know many of those people because they live here in town. And fortunately, I think we're getting through that event in a good place. I just want to close again with the request that we all kind of take away the message from this, that it's important to be prepared and it's important to be aware of the issues, but we don't want to live in fear and think about this as a crisis. We live in a beautiful province and a beautiful part of the world, and that with that comes some more than our share of hazards, but we trade that off for what we get for living here, and I think a little bit of preparation goes a long way, and we'll keep doing our jobs by making sure the infrastructure is better and stronger each day. So I want to thank all of you for coming and for taking the time to learn and listen. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And I also wanted to thank the presenters that were here this afternoon, as well as the panel for their information. I hope that those of you that attended found the information useful. I also want to take this moment to remind you that the brochures that were distributed by mail are posted on the BC Hydro, the City, and the Strathcona Regional District's websites. Paper copies are available at City Hall, at the recreational facilities, the community center and the sportsplex, the Strathcona Regional District Office, and Strathcona Gardens. The frequently asked questions, which there are copies of here today, are also answered on the cities as well as the regional districts' websites. And if you or if your friends, your family weren't able to attend today, I also want to let you know that there are additional repeat sessions of what you heard and saw today. The first will be this evening at 6:30 in the Tidemark Theatre again, and there will also be a second or third event scheduled on December 15th at 2 p.m. In addition to that, the same group will be presenting to the Campbell Indian Band in the near future as well. One final reminder that a video recording of this workshop has been made today, and it will be posted on YouTube with links to or from BC Hydro's, City of Campbell Rivers, and Strathcona Regional District website. So the information is there. I know you have seen the information firsthand today, but please pass this on to friends and family who may not have had the opportunity to see this. Thank you for coming. Have a great evening.